I talked about mental training and some personal qualities, and these are just some of the ideas, I guess, of personal qualities that are really important and key things that high-end coaches have talked about in different workshops and seminars I've been to. So the players take responsibility. I'm pretty sure that at some stage, whenever you had your child come off the court and blame something else or someone else or the wind or bad day or whatever, they've got to own it. We've got to teach them to own it, right? They're responsible for what happens on court, but they're responsible for organising themselves. They're packing their bags. We've got to teach them to be little adults because the game is a pretty rough game, and we've got to start to get them ready for some of those things, right? Be resilient. Be resilient to the physical training. Be resilient to the mental strain that tennis puts you under. Be good problem solvers. Because I don't know if you watch a lot of tennis, but tennis usually goes like this. Goes 1-all, 2-all, 3-all. Someone will win 3 games, then that person will change something and they'll win the next 3 games, and it kind of goes that way quite a bit, right? So particularly in girls tennis, men's tennis a little bit different, but trying to be better problem solvers so that they can actually adjust and adapt as the matches go on. Be self-motivated, right? So this is the one thing that I think has changed in our society, in our culture over the last probably 10 years. A few years ago, or 10 years ago, players used to get out of the car late and they'd sprint out onto the court and they'd be puffing and whatever, ready to go. Now players sort of drag themselves out on court and they act like they're cool, and they're not, right? They're not actually, I don't really want to be here, but they kind of do, right? But getting them to actually run, go down to the court, go, that urgency, that way of being all the time. And this is not just a quality for tennis. This is a quality for life. Right, but having that sense of urgency and being self-motivated, I think, is important. Get them to write in their diaries by themselves. Get them to get you out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning to come down for some training sessions that they've organised. Those sort of things, right? So you want that self-motivation from the players. Being disciplined. Discipline to me isn't being naughty or nice whether you're throwing the racket, whether you're swearing or carrying on. I don't like that, but yeah. But that's not, discipline to me is making good decisions under pressure. Doing things you don't want to do because you have to, right? So those sort of disciplines I think are really important for our children to have and be able to develop in what we do. And you'll often see if we're not happy with someone picking up balls, we'll send them to a bottom court or something like that. Having the discipline to do the things that they need to do, right? Being reflective, being able to look back on a match or on a training session or whatever and say, oh, I could do this better next time. Taking risks. I don't know if you watch a lot of the tennis, but this is a very high-end risk-taking game. Right? You've got to know your percentages, but you've got to be able to take your chances and take your risks when you play it. And lastly, and this is the most important one for me, be a good contributor. All right? Our best players and our players that have been with us and had the most amount of success have contributed back into our program in some way. Right? So they hit with weaker players from time to time. They share their experiences with other players. They give their very best.
A lot of them come back during right now, summer break for the US colleges. So we've got players coming back from US
probably
colleges.
5 or 6 coming back from college. Yeah, so just being a good contributor to what we do, and it's a value of ours. If people are here just to be selfish and they just keep taking out of the pot, there's nothing in the pot for anyone else to take out either. So we've got to put something back in all the time. Okay, building competitive. This is that thing from Jonah Oliver. Okay, so these are his three pillars, and I believe strongly in these 3 things. Number 1 is it's not about reducing stress and pressure. It's about building capacity to embrace it. So it's not about taking pressure away from the players. It's actually teaching them how to handle it and how to respond when they're there. And it's something that as parents we just don't do a lot of because we think they can handle it and we think that this happens, or we actually go the other way and say, oh, it's okay, that didn't really happen anyway. No, it did happen, but here's how to best handle those things, right? The other thing, it's not about motivating people, it's connecting them to what matters. So you guys have all heard me on the court. I think I'm a pretty good motivator. I've actually got to change some of the ways in which I coach to try and connect the kids to doing the things that they need to do. So there's a reason and a rationale for it, and they buy into it better. All right, so they've got to understand why they're doing the things and connect that to it. Right? Why do I have to move my feet more? Well, if you don't run, you can't get to hit the ball. You might have the nicest technique in the world, but if you're not there, you're going to swing at nothing, right? So those sort of things, connecting into things that matter, right? Being a positive thinker, it's not being a positive thinker, right? Sorry, it's not positive thinking, it's taking positive action no matter how you feel. So one of Sam Stosur's famous words when she won her first US Open, right? She sat in a press conference, she said, "I'm so relieved. That's the first time in my tennis career I played how I needed to, not how I felt." Right? So teaching the kids that emotional maturation, that emotional maturity, and being able to cope with those things. Now, that's a long way down the track, but if we don't start now to put the building blocks in place that allow those things to happen and embed that in what we do in our programs, we're going to have, I don't know whether you guys like Nick Kyrgios, but he hasn't been very helpful to us as coaches, right? He's been not a good ambassador, right? So we'd rather not have those type of players. We'd rather have people that can actually cope and deal with things and be able to be positive about their experience in some way. I mean, I prefer an Ash Barty, who I think epitomises a lot of these things. Okay, so we're going to do some things that you guys aren't going to be happy with. You're going to think, oh, gee, a bit hard on the kids. That's a bit rough, right? We do it with love and care because we often we think we can handle it. So I want you to think about this slide. So it's a tiger in a cage, and the caption is, "It's hard to survive in a jungle when you're trained in a zoo." Right? So we want to train the kids in the jungle a little bit and stress them and put them under pressure and be able to get them to, right? But then give them a cuddle at the end of it when they're upset and not happy and say, "Hey, listen, I think you've got to deal with it this way. This is another way of doing it." Right? So for me, it's being on that journey. You know, it's like for a long time we took kids away to tournaments, and every time I sat at the 12-seat bus there, and the players were wanting to get in, and the parents would come up to you and say, "Well, listen, can you make sure little Johnny has a really good experience with you?" And I would go, "Look, I'm not. That's good, but that's probably not what we're all about. Little Johnny's going to have 250 good experiences, 250 great experiences, and 500 average ones. It's how he handles the average ones that are important to me, and how we actually work with him on handling those things." So I think that gives you an idea of what we're about. It's building the person. And I've done a little bit. I've been lucky enough to spend a little bit of time with as a mentor to me, Wayne Bennett. And Wayne's key things to me is, everyone heard of Wayne? Coach of the Dolphins now. He's probably the greatest or second greatest coach. And his concepts are really simple: person, athlete, player. Right? Be the person that you have to be. Build the person that you need. Work on the athlete. Develop the player. Much easier to work with things that way. So, I guess it's a thing you'll hear me say a lot, right? And it's not that you're out there lecturing the players about it. It's embedded in the lessons that you're teaching them on the court. Okay, who's responsible? So one of the things that you guys are going to challenge, and some people are nearly there at the moment, but there are a lot of different groups that are involved in tennis. There are different coaches. There are Tennis Australia with their nationalised programs. There are school programs and all sorts of things. But in my past job at the National Development Squad coach, in the jobs here, the one thing that stands out is who is responsible. So what I say to you is that you don't send your child to a school that has the best maths program, and then send them to another school that has the best English program, and then send them to another school that has the best science program. You send them to the one school for that holistic development. And what I've seen over the last probably 2 years is a lot of messed up children who are going to bits of everything, and there's no common themes in what they're doing, right? So as your child gets better, certainly take up some of the opportunities that become available through Tennis Australia. Not all of them, right? Some of them, right? But gear yourself more towards who is going to take responsibility for the development of my athlete, of my child. Who is going to be that person? Just like you do with your schooling. Okay? Okay, what your role is. Okay, number one is to love your child unconditionally. Doesn't matter whether they win or lose, or whether they, except for if they're behaving a little incorrectly, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Number two is to make your child accountable for their behaviour. right? If you're not happy with the way they behave, don't be afraid of, and in front of us, and we'll support you. Listen, Franzel, you didn't do the right thing, right? I'm not happy with you, right? Okay, and we will support you, right? Because it's big for us, those family values, and that's intrinsic in everything that we do, right? Make your child accountable for their effort, because the one thing they have absolute control over is the effort they put in. They have absolute control over that, right? So if you find that someone's not running on the court, your child's not running on the court, and you're not happy with those things, let us know, and we'll let them know, or let them know, and us, that you're not happy with those efforts, right? They can be doing better. Encourage the ownership of their tennis lives and the decisions and efforts that they make. Instill good values in your child, right? So everybody's probably had the experience of cheating in tennis. It's horrible, and we've let this happen, right? But again, for us, we will overrule our own players if we see it happening, because the value of being fair and honest is a core value of lifetimes, all right? And we would like to set the example for everybody else that this is what needs to be done, all right? So that's one example of it. And behaviour around the courts and all of the other things. So at the moment, there's a little bit of a problem with a bunch of old 16, 17-year-old boys, not ours, with their behaviours around courts, and it's resulted in a referee getting threatened and one boy getting a long break from tennis. But that's got there because there's been inaction in the past, and we just don't want that to happen. Understanding that your tennis journey, both parents and players, is going to be long and winding, and it's not like that. It's not a consistent incline all the way through. You're going to have some little bobbles and around the corners and whatever, and that's okay. That's part of the development process for the child, and it'll be part of their physical maturation, part of their psychological maturation, and certainly part of their tennis development. Right? So there'll be things they get stuck on, and it's not going to be one way. Having patience and consistency in the way we develop it, right? So, I see a lot of quite emotive parents coming when the kids come off the courts. They're really happy when they win. They're really angry when they lose, right? So just being consistent with those sort of things. And to understand, for me, I guess this is a big one for me, there's no magic wand. I don't have it, Mark doesn't have it, there's no coach out there that has it. If you want to see where the magic is, tell your child to go to a mirror and have a look in it, because that's where the true magic is in your child. It's not someone else waving a wand. What we can do is, I kind of see myself as being like an accountant. I go to my accountant and I say, listen, he'll go, this is the options that you have. And I said, well, he said, this was the best one, that's the next best one, that's the third best one. I go, well, I want the third best one because that suits me best. Right? So I see ourselves being like an accountant. We'll throw options out there for you and information out and try and guide you through things. But at the end of the day, they're your children. Right? All we can do is give the best information we can for you guys to make decisions on. Okay, you guys have seen the little lifetime diaries that your child would have been handed when they arrived here. Right, we've got to get back and start using those, and even if we don't on the court, that they get them out in the car on the way home and they make some little notes of things. It's another way of them taking greater ownership. So I'll talk a little bit more about that to the children directly, but making notes after training, making notes after any sessions they do, any other important information after matches, all of those sort of things. Use that diary. I think it's an important tool. Okay, so 12 years ago, like I mentioned, 12 years ago, Mark and I invested, I guess it would have been, in another program, which was the same as what we're trying to deliver here. We set it into 3 different areas, into a regional, state and national level program, and depended on what the volume of work and where the kids were, or where they got selected into, or where we structured into that program for them. It was a packaged up, so that all the different things that I talked about earlier, we can deliver on. All right. At the moment, you come in, you get a couple of physical sessions, and you get some on-court training. All right. If you guys want to do more than that, there's more that we can actually be doing here. All right. And we want to package that up and structure it up so that we're giving you more and better information, and you have a direction and a reason for your child to be doing this. Because right now, if I said to you, where do you see your child being in 2 years' time? Most of you might have an idea of what it is, but you won't have any idea of how you want to get there. And part of this is teaching you and training you guys about the pathway and how to actually get there and what your child should be looking at doing, what the norms are at an international level, and what your child could be looking at doing through that process. Right, so yeah, I'll just push on with that. So what we're suggesting, right, is for the children of this program to look at doing three squad sessions a week, 3 physical sessions with those squad sessions. Everyone see that? Right. 1 tournament support program where we want to go off and watch the kids play, watch what they play, make notes, give them information on their matches, talk to your parents, do all sorts of things there, but not during school holidays. We want to do that as well, right? But during the term that they're committed to a tournament that we pre-select a little bit, we all go off and support your players in those things. Right, 1 inter-academy challenge per term, which I talked about earlier, having playing matches against other academies who are might be like-minded to us, or have stronger players that we might be able to tap into. 1 3-hour weekend training camp per term, right, which would be on a Saturday or a Sunday. Bring them all in, make them. I'll try and bring in a speaker that will talk to them about different things, but get on the court and do a lot of work as well, right? An annual tournament scheduling, which we would look at reviewing every half year. So these are the sort of tournaments that your child should be playing, and I've done all that tournament stuff up. That's all in place now for each of the levels of players. I've got it all colour coded. Mark's going crazy because I make a mess of things. I'm a little bit of a spreadsheet. I wouldn't say guru, but I mess it up a lot. And then having some technical review go on the Coach Now. Most of you have seen information go on the Coach Now program, right? But having some technical review information going on there, coming from Mark and myself, as well as the coach that you're working with, all right? To make sure that we're all over the top of it, because Mark and I aren't going to be the only 2 in the business that are working with your children. The other guys are too, and they're going to need to know exactly what we're trying to achieve, and we'll guide that as the private coaches a little bit as well. So the outcome that we're looking for here is to produce national and international level players and tennis athletes again. So worst scenario, we would like these players to be able to go to college. And when we started this project about 12 years ago, I think we've had 10 or 11 players go to college. We've had some players go on the tour and have success on tour, and a range of other things that have happened. So for us, that's what we'd like to do. It's a long-term project. So we're looking at 7 to 10 years with your children because of the ages and where they're at. But trying to educate you guys about the pathway and just starting it off. Now, you might go and do this for a couple of years and go, well, you know what, this isn't for us, and opt out. That's okay. That's all right. But we wanted to start something off. So, you got any, Mark? Is there anything else you want to?
I guess that's the key elements to what we think they should be doing. Basically wrapped up, and you can always add extra to it. You can't subtract from it because that's one of the key elements we think you should be doing. But really, there's a lot of competition in that on top of what they're doing currently. So, like Britt touched on right at the start, competition drives everything. The more they compete, the more they play from a young age, the better, basically. So, pricing wise, I'll send out with this slideshow a little bit more detail on it, and just when we're going to kick it off, the pricing and all those sort of things. So,
I know there's a lot of content there, so there's probably a lot of questions. So fire away.